One of the last Pacific Theater sea battles before Japan lost its naval power was the Battle of Samar. After attracting several U.S. ships, the Japanese Navy attempted to stop the liberation of the Philippines in the Battle of Leyte Gulf on October 2, 1944, east of Samar Island. A Japanese fleet of 23 warships, including the largest battleship ever built, ambushed Taffy 3, a tiny U.S. force unit of less than 13 ships. After almost 3 years of fighting in the Pacific, the Americans won an epic last stand and prepared for battle. Japanese air power was declining. As allies approached mainland Japan, the Japanese Imperial Navy and Army saw technological and economic advantages. One strategy was superior enemy fortification of islands from amphibious assaults, but American dominance increased. They then deployed larger fleets to survive against overwhelming odds because their crippled economy could not afford to lose more ships and aircraft without a purpose. This forced Japanese commanders to form a combined fleet for naval operations. Philippine liberation began with Operation King II on October 17, 1944. General Douglas MacArthur's forces landed off Leyte Island, and the latest native population of almost 1 million people cooperated. An operation show by the Japanese Imperial Navy's first mobile fleet faced American forces off Leyte Island in a decisive battle. Vice Admiral Jakaburo Ozawa's Northern Force Fleet was to lure the U.S. Third Fleet away. A successful maneuver would leave the Allied landing forces vulnerable by air and sea. Vice Admirals Takeo Kurita and Shoji Nishimura took advantage. At midnight on October 23, both men sent their center and southern forces to destroy enemy ships and ground troops at Leyte, trapping the remaining Americans. In the Palawan Passage, U.S. submarine starter days saw Vice Admiral Kurita's center force. The Sheboygan Sea battle followed. Kurita's center force included destroyers, cruisers, and massive super battleships. Yamato and Musashi were the heaviest and most powerful warships then. 2 U.S. Navy submarines sank 2 Japanese cruisers with torpedoes after receiving permission to fight. A squadron of 30 Grumman Hellcats and several Curtiss Helldiver bombers with 500-pound bombs helped destroy the 71,000-ton Musashi. The destroyer Shimakase rescued Kurita and 600 crew members, and the Vice Admiral shortly after transferred to the Yamato to lead his force westward. Nishimura's southern force was attacked an hour later but only slightly damaged. After facing the American 7th Fleet Support Force, they were destroyed in the Battle of Surigao Strait. Although the southern force was defeated and the Musashi destroyed, the Americans were unwittingly trapped. 3 Task Force 38 groups and Admiral Halsey were drawn into battle. To face Ozawa's northern force off Cape and Ghana, over 45 destroyers, 600 aircraft, 5 aircraft carriers, 6 fast battleships, and 8 cruisers accompanied Halsey. There were only 3 light carriers and 100 aircraft in the northern force. 9 destroyers, 3 light cruisers, and 2 battleships. The sacrificial diversion moved most of Halsey's fleet away and helped him approach Japan's trap. Vice Admiral Kurita ordered the maneuver after fainting on the way out. Yamato, but it turned around as the center force entered the San Bernardino Strait. The Japanese vessels faced only scattered light taffy task groups of escort carriers from the American 7th Fleet at night. David versus Goliath at Leyte Island, the other ships were miles away. The northernmost carrier unit, Task Unit 7743, under Rear Admiral Clifton Sprigg, was mostly attacked by the Japanese. Task Unit was usually called the call sign is Taffy 2. 3 destroyers, 6 small escort carriers, and 4 destroyer escorts were not enough to fight Kurita's massive Yamato and his 18-inch guns. For battleships, 11 destroyers, 6 heavy and 2 light cruisers, friendly reconnaissance aircraft informed Clifton of the powerful Japanese naval formation, turning the situation into a David versus Goliath battle. He anticipated a fierce crash. One shot from the Yamaha was enough to destroy any ship from Taffy 3, and the Americans' most powerful weapons were Mark 12 5-inch guns on the destroyers by 6 a.m. on October 25, 1944. Kurita saw Taffy 2. Japanese center force began forming and closed in at 30 knots. Minutes later, Yamaha salvos barely missed American vessels, bursting water walls. Taffy's destroyers threw smokescreens to hide the retreat to Leyte Island and prevent pinpoint Japanese shots. While the task force navigated turbulent waters and massive splashes on the USS Johnston destroyer, the few American carrier pilots prepared for a desperate attack. Captain Ernest Evans knew the Japanese would soon start shooting American ships like ducks. He refused to let the Japanese destroy his task group on a leafy island. Evans ordered his crew to prepare for a furious charge against Corrido's 23 warship centers without a fight. The 15,000-ton Fletcher-class U.S. Johnston destroyer abruptly emerged from the smokescreen and sailed straight into one of the strongest fleets ever assembled. Evans preferred buying the other 3 tacky ones. You need time to reach Liddy Island safely. The Johnston then zigzagged and fired violently at any enemy within range. Fighting Avenger and Hellcats flew over. The destroyer miraculously reached the Japanese Kimono heavy cruiser, 7 times its weight, and dropped ordnance with perilous strafing runs in a sky full of smoke and explosions for more than 500 anti-aircraft guns. Evans ordered all 5-inch guns to fire at it. The cruiser's superstructure and heavy gun mounts were destroyed in minutes by 200 rounds. The Kumano's hull split in 2 after the Johnston's ton fired 10 torpedoes. Evans was ordered to turn back at full speed while firing all his ammunition at enemy vessels after spending all his ship's heavy payload in this battle. The destroyer was then hit in the boiler by 16-inch shells, slowing it down. Half another hit ignited the anti-aircraft ammunition magazine and blew several decks, while the last hit damaged its bridge and radar. Still, the battered and heavily damaged Johnston stood out against the Japanese warships on the horizon. Captain Evans lost 2 fingers and experienced facial shrapnel, but he stood up and ordered his crew before USS like a force of nature. Johnston went underwater. The destroyer's Heermann and Hull and the escort Samuel Roberts joined the suicide attack. American destroyer charged into combat, passed by burning Johnston. Evans and his crew, then turned back for a brave last stand with their brothers. While the few standing American aircraft continued their strafing runs, knocking every gun with their machine guns, Taffy 3's fleet, including Dennis John C. Butler and Raymond, joined the fight. USS Hull's crew evacuated at 8:30 a.m. 10 minutes later, USS Gambier Bay sank, but its crew was saved. With their torpedoes gone, the American destroyers zigzagged and fired their last salvos at 8:50 a.m. After USS Samuel B. Roberts was critically hit, the light cruiser Yayaji and other destroyers attacked the Johnston at 9:45 a.m. Captain Evans and his crew quickly abandoned ship, and to their surprise, the Japanese center force withdrew after the Americans sank 3 cruisers and disabled 3 more. Vice Admiral Kurita called off the attack expecting reinforcements. Taffy 2 lost 800 men, 750 were wounded, and 4 sank. America defeated a Japanese fleet of 23 warships with a task force of 13 modest ships in the Battle of Samar. The Japanese Navy lost its final battle, and its ships stayed in port for the rest of the war. Captain Evans never returned after abandoning the Johnston and boarding a raft. Posthumously, Evans received the Medal of Honor, citing his valiant fighting spirit in the historic battle as an inspiration.